Svara Tenne Brahma Daya Adikavaye Mujantija Surya Tejo Vayamrita Jata Vinimayo Jatra Trisargum Risya Dhamna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyang Param Dhimahi.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all
Of
causes.
the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universe.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he's independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
It is she only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
The original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations
of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
Water seen the fire, land seen the water.
Only because of him do the material universes,
Only because of him do the material universe,
temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature,
temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature,
appear factual although they are unreal.
appear factual although they are unreal.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri
who
Krishna,
is eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
who is eternally existent in the transcendental world,
which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute
Dharma projita kaitravoccha,
Dharma Prajita Kaitabutra,
paramo nirmatsaranam satam,
Paramo Nirmasaranam Satam,
vedyam vastavam atra vastu,
Vidyam Vastavamasta Vastu,
shivedam tapa trayon bulanam,
Shivadam Tapatayona,
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni krite,
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni,
kim va parer ishwaraha,
Kimva Paririshvara,
sadyo hridi avarudyate tra,
Sadyurudya Varijati,
krite bihi sususabhistakshana.
Kritibhi Shushu Shubhistakyanat,
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest
which is
truth,
understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in the heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare
Such
of all.
truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold misery.
This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity,
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva is mature.
is sufficient in itself for God realization.
It's sufficient itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
With the need of the other scripture.
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one is attentively submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture of
the
knowledge,
Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpaturur galitam phalam,
Nigama kalpataro galitam phalam,
sukhamukad amrita dravya samyutam,
Sukamukad amrita drava sangitam,
pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam,
Pivata Bhagavatam rasamalam,
muhur aho raska bhuvi bhavukaha.
Mura Hora Sika Bhavuka.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
O expert and thoughtful and relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures.
The mature fruit, the desired trees of Vedic literatures.
It emanated from the lips of C. Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Shishukadeva Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit is even more tasteful,
Therefore, this food has become even more tasteful.
although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for
including liberated souls.
all, including liberated souls.
Shinvatam
Swakata Krishna.
Shambhatam Swakata Krishna.
Punya Shravana Kirtana.
Punya Shravana Kirtana.
Vidyantaksto hi Bhadrani.
Vidyantasto hiya bhadrani.
Vidunoti Suhitsatam.
Vidunoti suhitsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from the Vedic Lord.
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
Or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita.
is itself righteous activity.
It is self-righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
For one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling within everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's heart.
acts as a best wishing friend,
Acts as the best wishing friend.
and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
And purifies the devotees constantly engaged in hearing of him.
Nasta presu abhadresu
Nasta prayeshwa bhadreshu.
nityam bhagavata sevaya
Nityam bhagavata sevaya.
bhagavati uttam sloke
Bhagavati uttama sloke.
bhaktir bhavati naistiki.
Bhakti bhavati nastiki.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops dharma and transcendental knowledge.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the
and
devotees,
from the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the transcendental service of the Lord,
he
and
becomes fixed
in the devotional service of the Lord. Tadarajas tamo bhava kamaloba dayaschaye cheta etara navidam stitvam sattve prasidati. By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional service,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes free from the modes of passion and ignorance,
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasana manaso
Evam prasanna manas
bhagavat bhakti yogataha
bhagavat bhakti yoga
bhagavat tattva vijnanam
bhagavat tattva vijnanam
mukta sangasya jayate.
mukta sangasya jayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure
becomes
goodness,
enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
and understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate hridaya grantis
Chidyate hridaya granti
chidyante sarvasamsaya
chidyante sarvasamsaya
Shriyante jasyakarmani
chidyante sachakarmani
drista evatmanishware.
drusta evatmanishvari.
Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga serves the heart of material affection
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of samsam samagram,
understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth Personality of Godhead.
understanding the supreme absolute true personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or his devotee, or his pure devotee, or his devotee in Krishna consciousness,
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or his devotee in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, Text number 4. Dehapatya kalatraya. One second. Dehapatya kalatradishu.
Dehapatya kaladrishu.
Atmasanyesu satsvapi.
Atma seneshu swasatsvapi.
Tesam pramato nidanam.
Tesham pramatto nidhanam.
Pasyanapi na pasyati. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Persons devoid of Atma Tattva do not inquire into the problems of life, being too attached to the fallible soldiers like the body, children, and wife. Although sufficiently experienced, they still do not see their inevitable destruction. Purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. This material world is called the world of death. Every living being, beginning from Brahma, whose duration of life is some thousands of millions of years, down to the germs who live for a few seconds only, is struggling for existence. Therefore, this life is a sort of fight with material nature, which imposes death upon all. In the human form of life, a living being is competent enough to come to an understanding of this great struggle for existence. But being too attached to family members, society, country, etc., he wants to win over the invincible material nature by the aid of bodily strength. by the aid of bodily strength, children, wife, relatives, etc. Although he is sufficiently experienced in the matter by dint of past experience and previous examples of his deceased predecessors, he does not see that the so-called fighting soldiers, like the children, relatives, society members, and countrymen, are all fallible in the great struggle. One should examine the fact that his father or his father's father has already died, and that he himself is therefore also sure to die. And similarly, his children, who are the would-be fathers of their children, will also die in due course. No one will survive in the struggle with material nature. The history of human society definitely proves it. Yet the foolish people still suggest that in the future they will be able to live perpetually with the help of material science. This poor fund of knowledge exhibited by human society is certainly misleading, and it is all due to ignoring the constitution of the living soul. This material world exists only as a dream due to our attachment to it. Otherwise, the living soul is always different from the material nature. The great ocean of material nature is tossing with the waves of time, and the so-called living conditions are something like foaming bubbles which appear before us as bodily self, wife, children, society, countrymen, etc. Due to a lack of knowledge of self, we become victimized by the force of ignorance and thus spoil the valuable energy of human life in a vain search after permanent living conditions, which are impossible in this material world. Our friends, relatives, and so-called wives and children are not only fallible, but also bewildered by this outward glamour of material existence. As such, they cannot save us. Still, we think that we are safe within the orbit of family, society, or country. The whole materialistic advancement of human civilization is like the decoration of a dead body. Everyone is a dead body, flapping only for a few days, and yet all the energy of human life is being wasted in the decoration of this dead body. Sukadeva Goswami is pointing out the duty of the human being after showing the actual position of bewildered human activities. Persons who are devoid of the knowledge of Atma Tattva are misguided, but those who are devotees of the Lord and have perfect realization of transcendental knowledge are not bewildered. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So this promise of immortality is complete nonsense. And just to show you that this complete nonsense is publicized, and many people in this world are convinced of this false narrative. So there's an article that's called "Death Will Be Optional and Aging Curable by 2045, Say Genetic Engineers." And this was published on 21st of April 2018, and the web page is called Think Spain, S-P-A-I-N. And they begin by saying, dying will be optional within just 27 years, and the aging process will be reversible, according to two genetic engineers during the presentation of their new book in Barcelona, that's Spain. Jose Luis Cordero, born in Venezuela to Spanish parents, and Cambridge, UK mathematician David Wood, founders of the operating system Symbian, have just published The Death of Death, and say immortality is a real and scientific possibility that could come much earlier than originally thought. Humans will only die in accidents, never of natural causes or illness, by around the year 2045, says Cordero and Wood, who say it is crucial that old age starts to be classified as an illness so that publicly funded research into its cure can extend. Nanotechnology is key, among other new genetic manipulation techniques, the engineers said, during the presentation at Barcelona Equestrian Circle. Equestrian means horse, right? So it just shows where they are at. It's called horse nonsense. The process will involve turning bad genes into healthy ones, eliminating dead cells from the body, repairing damaged cells, treatments with stem cells, and printing vital organs in 3D. Cordero, who is based at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, in the USA, says he has chosen not to die, and that in 30 years' time, he will be younger than he is today. Aging is the result of DNA tails, known as telomeres, in chromosomes, of which every cell except red blood and sex cells has 23 pairs. Becoming shorter and reversing aging involves lengthening the telomeres. Telomeres become damaged and shortened with the passage of time, a process that speeds up the event of toxins entering the body. Smoking, alcohol, and air pollution are among the elements that reduce the length of telomeres, thus accelerating aging. Cordero and Wood believe that within 10 years, illnesses such as cancer will be curable, and that major international corporations such as Google will be entering the field of medicine because they are beginning to realize that curing aging is possible. Microsoft has reportedly already announced the setting up of a cryopreservation center in which a scientist is researching the possibility of cancer being completely curable within a decade. The engineers explained that although people generally do not know about it, it was discovered in 1951 how cancer cells are immortal. When Henrietta Lacks died from cervical cancer, surgeons removed the tumor and kept it, and it is still alive today. Immortality will not necessarily mean the planet becomes overcrowded, the scientists say. There is still plenty of room for more people on Earth, and these days, people do not have anywhere near as many children as they did in past decades and centuries. Plus, it will be possible to live in space by then. Japan and Korea's, if they continue with their current trend of hardly having any children, will be extinct within 2 centuries. There'll be no Japanese or Korean people on the planet, Cordero says. But thanks to these new techniques, there will indeed be Japanese and Korean people because they'll live forever and remain young. Yay! The cost of anti-aging treatment was compared to that of the latest smartphones. At first, it'll be expensive, but with a competitive market, the price will gradually fall because it'll be something that benefits everyone, Cordero says. Technology, when it's new, is poor and extremely expensive, but it eventually becomes democratic and mainstream and becomes cheaper. The engineers say that they have already been employing their techniques for 2 years illegally, but in Colombia, where there are fewer regulations covering genetic manipulation. Elizabeth Parrish, their first human patient, started to see symptoms of aging and asked what could be done to prevent it. Her treatment is very risky and even illegal, Wood explains, but at the moment it is going well and has not had any adverse side effects, and the level of telomeres in her blood is already 20 years younger than before. I want Spain to have the place in the world of these technologies and show that we're not mad, it's just that people still don't know about them, Wood concluded. The Death of Death will eventually be published in 4 languages, at first Spanish, English, Portuguese, and Korean, and all proceeds from its sales will be plowed back into the author's research. Go to Premanandi, Haribol.
Meat eaters.
Huh?
Meat eaters.
Meat eaters, but their brain is their brain. See, they have reverse digestion. Instead of it coming out, it goes up to the brain. That's why they come up with these theories. Yeah, so you see, the explanation of Prabhupada seems to be negative, but it's not negative. It's realistic. The explanation of these fools is completely positive, right? So this is called fool's gold, or another way of looking at it would be Akash Mahal, or Hava Mahal. Well, no, they say Akash Mahal also, or Hava Mahal. That is a palace in the sky. You know what it means, but if you look for the palace in the sky, guess what? You never find it. So all this sounds wonderful, gives people hope, it's all upbeat, it's all scientific, and it's all junk.
You want to sell the books, that's all.
Huh?
You want to sell the book.
Yeah, death of death, the death of death. Yeah, it's very clever, and it's cute, and it's completely false and nonsense. So what's important here, there's several statements in this purport that are extremely important, where he says that this life is a sort of fight with material nature which imposes death upon all. In the human form of life, a living being is competent enough to come to an understanding of this great struggle for existence, but being too attached to family members, society, country, etc., he wants to win over the invincible material nature by aid of bodily strength, children, wife, relatives, etc. That's extremely pertinent statement. In other words, everybody understands that no one's ever won this fight against nature and struggle and basically death. But due to too much attachment to family members, society, country, etc., means sense gratification in general, right? He, or the fool, wants to win over the invincible material nature by the aid of bodily strength, children, wife, relatives, by the strength of these people who they themselves are all fallible, who are all going to die. So it's like a hopeless situation. Of course, what these two silly scientists did, they replaced, children, wife, relatives, etc., with science, as if science, or their science, their telomeres and all that nonsense they talked about, is going to defeat nature. And then they give the example of this poor woman who's a guinea pig, Elizabeth Parrish, their first human patient, started to see symptoms of aging and asked what could be done to prevent it. Her treatment is very risky and even illegal, Wood explained, but at the moment is going well, has not had any adverse side effects, and the level of telomeres in her blood is 20 years younger than before. Now, all this is unverifiable, right? You can't verify how long the telomeres were in the beginning, how much longer they've become, and the whole experiment is taking place in Venezuela, where there is much less scrutiny of genetic experiments, as those same experiments are not allowed in the United States and in Europe.
Well, they just thinking in terms of body, isn't it?
Yes, it's all body. They want to stay immortal in this body.
In this body.
Yeah, yeah. Or they want to immortalize themselves in the body of a robot with their mind, fed into the software of the robot. The robot will look exactly like them.
They're not really thinking about the soul, no?
Did you hear anything about the soul? Science means no soul. That's the real meaning of science. So here Prabhupada explains that, everybody knows they're going to die, but yet, because of attachment to sense gratification, they still try the impossible. Now, this is nothing new. See, some people might say, oh, this is new. No, this has been going on all throughout history. Like, for example, the Christians have always been seeking the Holy Grail, right? This is it's supposed to be in Ethiopia, in a subterranean cave somewhere. And some people think it's in somewhere in the United States, and other people think it's in their country, right? And whoever finds it, they'll attain immortality. And then there was the fountain of immortality that was being searched all over the world. And Ponce de Leon, a Spanish explorer, came all the way to the Americas thinking that this is basically a hearsay, that the fountain of immortality was in somewhere in present Florida. Then there are the alchemists. The whole idea of alchemy in the Middle Ages was to attain immortality. And therefore they were using very dangerous chemicals like mercury to achieve immortality. And then with all their experiments of changing, and then part of it also of alchemy was to transform base metals into gold. And on the basis of all the experimentation they did, instead of finding the elixir of immortality, instead of making base metals into gold, they founded allopathic medicine, which is what is being practiced today. What is allopathic medicine? Basically, it's using poisons to heal people. So, I mean, it's a difference between naturopathic and allopathic. Allopathic, they use poisons to kill people, to kill germs or viruses or whatever. And oftentimes in the beginning, they were killing people more frequently than saving them. And it's still going on today. When you get radiation therapy, you get chemotherapy, they're putting poisons into your body. But nowadays they find these terms to sort of lessen your fear. You know, they say, oh, it's pinpoint radiation. We only radiate the cancer cells, not any cells around. You know, it's all nonsense. I had a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, very nice man. He was an Iranian gentleman, lived in California, and he used to call me all the time for health advice. And one day he calls up and he says he has cancer. I said, well, what are you going to do? And he said, well, I'm getting radiation therapy. I said, don't do that. I said, don't do that. He said, no, you don't understand. I said, I don't understand. What is it? I don't know. It's pinpoint radiation. That was the first time I heard the pinpoint radiation. It only zaps the cancer cells and not any other cells. Before, it was a gross medical procedure. You know, yeah, my father died of that. He walked to the hospital and they had to carry him back home to die, because they basically irradiate your body with radiation, and you know, they kill the cancer, but you also kill everything else, right? So then they came up with this idea of pinpoint radiation. But my friend died anyway. I told him, don't do it. I said, you have a better chance. Just follow the dietary suggestions I give you. Take some natural herbs, change your diet, change your lifestyle, go to bed early, wake up early, and you know, and chant Hare Krishna. I said, you'll be okay. He said, no, I've already started this, and I have complete confidence in my doctor. Well, he's dead. When he died, his mother called me up and said, you know, he liked you very, very much. He was always talking about you, but he's dead now. I said, well, that's very sad. So, another main point here is that he says the history of human society definitely proves that no one will survive in the struggle with material nature. Yet, the foolish people still suggest that in the future, they will be able to live perpetually with the help of material science. Well, what did we just read? Right? That's exactly what they're promising. Death is optional. The death of death. So here, Prabhupada is predicting, because, Prabhupada obviously is based on Jnana Chaksus or Shastra Chaksus. He can foresee future, present, and past, or past, present, and future. So he's predicting right here what's going to happen in the future, and it happened. Because it's nothing new. This has been going on. All of a sudden, everyone's going to live forever on this earth, right? So what is the second coming of Christ? It's the same thing. When Christ comes, there's not going to be any more deaths. And there'll be 1,000 years of heavenly life on the earth, and then everybody goes back to heaven. See? So if you read Christian eschatology is a big word. It means the finality of things. So the end game, let's say. So the Christian eschatology is Jesus is going to come back, the second coming of Jesus, and his chosen people, the ones who believe in him, will live for 1,000 years in complete idyllic conditions on the earth. The earth will be like paradise, and then they'll go back to heaven for eternity. And everybody else is going to be judged. And what's the judgment? Everyone who's died and still in a cemetery, they all resurrect in their original body. In other words, that's why the Christians, the Muslims, and the Jews, all three of them have this idea of a second coming. In Islam, it's the second coming of the Mahdi. In Judaism, it's the Messiah. In Christianity, it's the second coming of Jesus. So, what happens in the second coming of Jesus? They have to protect the cemeteries because they're going to resurrect the material body, even though it's bones and dust. It's going to come out of. They're going to come out of the grave. Jesus is going to reanimate them, and then there's going to be a judgment of who should go to hell and who should go to heaven. And then the ones that stay are going to go to heaven. They're going to live for 1,000 years of idyllic life, and then they'll all go up to heaven. You should read it. I mean, it's complete nonsense, but people believe it. See, and so they would say, "Well, you guys have nonsense too. You believe that Krishna is God, but he was shot in the foot and he died. And just like an ordinary man, and this thing and that thing, and he had 16,000 wives. That's nonsense. That's complete nonsense. It's impossible. What's he, some Muslim sheikh or something? Well, Muslim sheikhs, I think the most has been like 100 to 200 wives. That's it, right? Couldn't handle more than that. So anyway, you see, there's nothing new about this elixir of immortality, but it's based on keeping the body immortal, right? And the whole Christian philosophy about the resurrection and the resuscitation of all the dead people, and then you have to have a body in order to be resurrected. It's all based on the body, right? Whether it's Islam, whether it's Judaism, whether it's Christianity. But yet, no one will survive in the struggle with material nature. The history of human society definitely proves it. Yet the foolish people still suggest that in the future they will be able to live perpetually with the help of material science. This poor fund of knowledge exhibited by human society is certainly misleading, and it is all due to ignoring the constitution of the living soul. Yeah, this is amazing. Every institution of education does not teach anything about the soul. Or they say that eventually through material combinations, a soul is created. Right? If there is a soul, it comes about through evolution of the body, or evolution of technology. Eventually, the computer will completely mimic a human being. So you see, these are all phony concepts, but yet people believe them. And why is it? Because they're attached. It says it here. They're attached to family, member, society, country, etc. So, and therefore, they try to win over the invincible material nature by the aid of bodily strength, children, wife, relatives, etc. And if that fails, they rely on science, material science. So, it says here, the material world exists only as a dream due to our attachment to it. Otherwise, the living soul is always different from the material nature. The great ocean of material nature is tossing with the waves of time, and the so-called living conditions are something like foaming bubbles which appear before us as bodily self, wife, children, society, countrymen, etc. How many times does he repeat this mantra, wife, children, society, countrymen, etc.? He repeats it like I think at least 4 or 5 times in this purport. Due to lack of knowledge of self, we become victimized by the force of ignorance and thus spoil the valuable energy of human life in a vain search after permanent living conditions, which are impossible in this material world. Well, this is something we have to be convinced of. If we can't be convinced of this, then we'll join the others who have drank the elixir of foolishness and irresponsibility to waste their whole life trying to do something that's impossible. Our friends, relatives, and so-called wives and children, you can add husbands in there too, are not only fallible, that means fallible means they're all going to fail, but also bewildered by the outward glamour of material existence. Yeah, you go to places like Las Vegas, there's plenty of lights, and there's a facsimile of the Taj Mahal, and there's this thing and that thing, and it's exciting, and you can become rich by gambling, all nonsense. And there are prostitutes, and there's all types of sense gratification, and it all looks good, but when you stay there a little bit, you'll see the ugly side of it, and it's very, very ugly. And it says, but also bewildered by the outward glamour of material existence. As such, they cannot save us. Still, we think that we are safe within the orbit of family, society, or country. The whole materialistic advancement of human civilization is like the decoration of a dead body. Everyone is a dead body, flapping only for a few days, and yet all the energy of human life is being wasted in the decoration of this dead body. Sukadeva Goswami is pointing out the duty of the human being after showing the actual position of bewildered human activities. Persons who are devoid of the knowledge of Atma Tattva are misguided, but those who are the devotees of the Lord and have perfect realization of transcendental knowledge are not bewildered. Well, this is a big, big subject, and it is full of absolute truth. But we have to. But if we are attached to material conditions, house, car, credit cards, and junk food, and sense gratification, and the family, and children, and relatives, and aunties and uncles, and also gadgets, all kinds of gadgets and technology and things like that. Then because of that attachment, even though we hear the truth, we don't follow it. We hear the truth, we know it's true, but because of that attachment, we don't follow it. And attachment to what? Attachment to everything that's going to disappear. And guess what? Our body is going to disappear too. See? But yet, we remain attached right up to the last moment. Right? So, this is a very difficult thing to understand. But here Prabhupada has explained it. Now, even though we hear the explanation, it doesn't mean that we will follow it. It can only happen if we constantly hear this. And the opposite of it, which is like we read yesterday, and something I'm going to read today. I won't finish it all because it's a little long. But we have to hear about the positive side. Just hearing the negative side is important, but we have to hear the positive side. So in chapter 70 of the Krishna book, Lord Krishna's daily activities. From the Vedic mantras, we learned that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has nothing to do, natasya karyam karanam cha vidyate. But if the Supreme Lord has nothing to do, how can we speak of the activities of the Supreme Lord? From the previous chapter, it is clear that no one can act the way Lord Krishna does. We should clearly note this fact. The activities of the Lord should be followed, but they cannot be imitated. For example, Krishna's ideal life as a householder can be followed, but if one wants to imitate Krishna by expanding into many forms, that is not possible. We should always remember, therefore, that Lord Krishna, although playing the part of a human being, simultaneously maintains the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the most important point right there. We can follow Lord Krishna's dealings with his wives as an ordinary human being, but his dealings with more than 16,000 wives at one time cannot be imitated. The conclusion is that to become ideal householders, we should follow in the footsteps of Lord Krishna as he displayed his daily activities, but we cannot imitate him at any stage of our life. Lord Krishna used to lie down with his 16,000 wives, but he would also rise from bed very early in the morning, 3 hours before sunrise. By nature's arrangement, the crowing of the cocks, meaning the roosters, warns of the Brahma Muhurta hour. There's no need of alarm clocks. As soon as the cocks crow early in the morning, it is to be understood that it is time to rise from bed. I'm going to buy some chickens now. I'm definitely going to buy some chickens. It's very auspicious. You know, usually they play the Chennai, but here Krishna had his own Chennai. It's the cock. You know. Hearing that sound, Krishna would get up from bed, but his rising early was not very much to the liking of his wives. The wives of Krishna were so much attached to him that they would lie in bed embracing him, and as soon as the cocks crowed, Krishna's wives would be very sorry and would immediately condemn the crowing. In the garden within the compound of each palace, there were parijata flowers. The parijata is not an artificial flower. We remember that Krishna brought the parijata trees from heaven and implanted them in all his palaces. Early in the morning, a mild breeze would carry the aroma of the parijata flower, and Krishna would smell it just after rising from bed. Due to this aroma, the honeybees would begin their humming vibration, and the birds would also begin their sweet chirping sounds. Altogether, it would sound like the singing of professional chanters engaged in offering prayers to Krishna. Although Srimati Rukmini Devi, the first queen of Lord Krishna, knew that Brahma Muhurta is the most auspicious time in the entire day, she would feel disgusted at the appearance of Brahma Muhurta because she was not very happy to have Krishna leave her side in bed. Despite Srimati Rukmini Devi's disgust, Lord Krishna would immediately get up from bed exactly on the appearance of Brahma Muhurta. An ideal householder should learn from the behavior of Lord Krishna how to rise early in the morning. However, comfortably he may be lying in bed, embraced by his wife. Wow. Amazing. After rising from bed, Lord Krishna would wash his mouth, hands, and feet, and would immediately sit down and meditate on himself. This does not mean, however, that we should also sit down and meditate on ourselves. We have to meditate upon Krishna, Radha Krishna. That is real meditation. Krishna is Krishna himself. Therefore, he was teaching us that Brahma Muhurta should be utilized for meditation on Radha Krishna. By such meditation, Krishna would feel very much satisfied, and similarly, we will also feel transcendently pleased and satisfied if we utilize the Brahma Muhurta period to meditate on Radha and Krishna, and if we think of how Sri Rukmini Devi and Krishna acted as ideal householders to teach the whole human society to rise early in the morning and immediately engage in Krishna consciousness. We can't even convince our whole congregation to rise early and come to Mangal Arati. Imagine trying to convince the whole human population. But we have to hear this. We have to hear how Krishna lived every day as an ideal householder. If we don't hear this, then obviously we won't even think about it. And we have to hear it over and over again. Here it is, Krishna is showing how an ideal grihastha should live. They should wake up every day in the Brahma Muhurta period. And he's talking about 3 hours before sunrise. Imagine what you could do 3 hours before sunrise. You could finish all your rounds. You could read a whole chapter of Bhagavad Gita. You could also come to Mangal Arati. You can do all that before the sunrise. Right? And if you do that, then you're ready. You're armed for the rest of the day. But if you go to sleep late, you can't do it. It's not possible. And for example, I'll tell this true story again. There's this family, husband and wife, they both got COVID. So they asked me what to do. I said, well, first thing is lifestyle adjustment. Going to bed early, waking up early. Second thing is, because you wake up early, you should chant all your rounds. And then, if you live far away from the temple, it's okay, then you should have Mangal Arati. Wake up the Lord, meditate on the Lord, chant the Arti song. And then you can read from Srimad Bhagvatam, Bhagavad Gita. And then you begin your chores. You know, you have to wake up the kids, you have to get them ready for school, you have to cook for them, all that. You have to take them to school and all that stuff. You have to go to work. And then when you come home, you should be tired. And don't eat later than 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, and take the rest before 10 o'clock, and preferably 9 o'clock or 8:30, so that you can start again the next day. So your most intense activity of the day is in the Brahma Muhurta. And everything else, you'll slide through it very easily because you're going to take rest early and wake up early. So you haven't changed anything. The only thing you did was regulate yourself. You haven't changed anything. But you're not going to take rest after 10, because if you take rest after 10, you cannot function properly the next day. There's some biorhythm in the body that is adjusted to taking rest early, you know, and the earlier you could take rest, the better. Not 6 o'clock at night, but 8:30, 9 o'clock, 9:30, and you feel completely rested. And if you did not eat heavily late at night, and you'll be completely digested, your body will eliminate itself naturally early in the morning, and you just have energy. You'll have a lot of energy to do things, and mental clarity and health. See? So just follow Krishna's lifestyle. That's it. That's why we're reading about it. I'm not going to read the rest of it. It's long. I'll finish reading it tomorrow. But every day we'll hear the analysis of material life. That's what's in this part of the Bhagavatam. And then we'll also hear the positive side, how to live properly, and the nectar of devotion and Krishna's transcendental pastimes. Okay, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions? Aya, Maya, Para. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Ravana was a scientist. He was using advanced science. He built a tunnel through the middle of the earth. Imagine that. And got gold from Brazil and brought it, and jewels and all kinds of precious metals, and brought it back to build a high-tech city. He had a high-tech city. And he had brahmanas doing pujas also. Even demons are smart, right? They're not dumb. In ancient times, the demons, they also respected brahmanas. They knew it was devastating if they disrespected or killed a brahmana. Look what happened to Indra. You know, he killed his guru. Look at all the suffering he had to go through. And cows. You're going to see here, every morning Krishna gave away many cows that were fully decorated with gold and silver and garlands and sandalwood pulp and everything, and gave them away to brahmanas every day. Imagine, you know, how many cows he must have had in Dwarka. So cows and brahmanas. Brahmanas are a symbol of education. Cows are a symbol of opulence and peace. Okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. You see, generation after generation, they're trying to become immortal. Right from the ancient times. It's nothing new. Right from ancient times, this has been going on.
Good to see when they die first.
Well, they always die before, you know, what they promised happens. Yeah. And then a new generation of phonies comes up, and they make more promises, you know. Now you can chronicle this throughout history. There's always been this search for immortality, right? So I did a fast thing, but we can do it more thoroughly. In fact, okay. So wait a minute. We did have homework, right? Who did the homework? Okay, come. You can sit on the chair. I'm going to fix that microphone for you.
And also, Maharaj, I was able, yesterday I was able to find, it's in 550, where you said, 550, that it would be better to be an atheist by slightly both brothers than a hypocrite by believing in one. So it means like
yes,
we were discussing that instead of
it's more dangerous to associate with people who believe in Lord Chaitanya and disrespect Nityananda than to associate with people who reject both of them.
Right.
It's more dangerous because they look like they're bona fide, right? They're having Aarti, they're worshiping deities, they're chanting Hare Krishna. So
Are there people that follow one versus I mean,
yeah,
right now are there sampradayas that do only?
everything is there, Prabhu. Nothing has changed. You scratch the surface a little bit, and you'll find it. You know, like for example, the followers of Pushti Marg. They don't want to hear anything about Krishna's Rasa Leela. They only want to hear about Krishna lifting up Govardhan Hill. They reject anything after that. Now, the devotees, they chant, what's their mantra? They have a mantra that they repeat over and over. We have the Hare Krishna mantra. They have the other mantra. What is it? Shri Krishna Saranam Mama. You know, may I always surrender to Krishna, right? But their Krishna only goes up to 6 years old, 6 or 7 years old. After that, they don't want to. Goes up to lifting Govardhan Hill. After that, they don't want to hear anything about Krishna. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm not saying they're on the same level as the brother of Krishnadas Kaviraj. I mean, they are Vaishnavas. and they're hearing about Krishna. But then there's so much, I mean, when you see what Lord Chaitanya gave, it's the whole picture. But almost everywhere else you look, there's going to be some part of it, and not complete. And it's still people make advancement, but they don't get the whole nectar. So Krishna on the battlefield, they don't want to hear about it. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and Prabhupada gave the logic of the half hen. If you have faith...
You have to speak into the microphone.
Oh, yeah, sorry. If you have faith in one but disrespect the other, your logic is like the logic of accepting half a hen.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's verse 176. 177.
Yes.
So this is it, Prabhu. I mean, Maharaj, that when this verse is you went through, but we.
You didn't notice it.
Yeah. So this is the thing, Prabhu.
That's why I brought it up. Yeah.
We get engrossed in the storyline. I mean, I speak for myself. It's such a foolish that, the story and the pastimes is so sweet and nectar, and this is without the help of Guru. It is impossible to understand these important philosophy and understanding that why we must be doing without, and even that entire story of Maniketan, Meena Ketan, Ramdas and Kaviraj Goswami Maharaj's brother, the argument, when they get upset. So this is basically Nityanand Prabhu is the Guru Tattva, and without Guru, I mean, like how his brother accepted Gauranga, but not having that much faith in Nityananda.
Oh no, disrespect.
Disrespect.
Yeah. Haribol. So what was the homework for today?
Yeah. So the homework was explain in depth the transcendental emotional existence of gopis.
That's a big homework.
Yeah.
No, but I told you read the Adi Leela 4th chapter.
4th chapter.
Yeah.
So it's from text 185 onwards.
Yeah, well, you don't have to read the whole thing. Just give it a short
crux.
synopsis of it.
Okay.
The short synopsis is, what is pure love of Krishna? Just explain that. What is a symptom of real pure love of the Lord?
Spontaneous love. And spontaneous love for Krishna. And also, now from the previous classes, what I understand is, once we acquire, or once we understand this knowledge, or once this knowledge is given to us, then we start to also, have detachment in terms of not like whimsically, but a real sense of attachment that start having detachment, which is like knowledge alone is useless unless we have the renunciation or detachment.
That's true, but the main thing is, Radharani, it explains in the 4th chapter, Radharani and the gopis are fully convinced that their body belongs to Krishna.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And therefore, they have no desire for sense gratification. They only want to please Krishna. So this is an unknown factor. Everybody else is acting for pleasure for their body. But the gopis have no desire for personal pleasure at all. They only want to serve Krishna. And they say, this body that we have, it belongs to Krishna. It's only meant for his pleasure. You see. So that's like a little hint right there. And also it says there that if there is a reason for separation, but the couple does not separate, that's a sign that there's really love. If there's a valid reason for separation, but they don't separate, it's a sign that there's real love and attachment. So anyway, there are a lot of points. I mean, that's a big chapter, and it's very profound.
Yeah.
But the idea that the gopis do not consider that the body belongs to them, they're convinced that their body belongs to Krishna. And it's a spiritual body, and they only dress nicely, they only sing nicely, they're experts in the 64 arts, cultural arts, and they're highly trained only to do things that please Krishna. and they're not looking for any personal satisfaction. This is unheard of. I mean, if you think about it, everybody has a motive, a personal motive for whatever they do. The only motive the gopis have is to please the Lord. And the most intense is Srimati Radharani. Yeah. All right, we'll talk about that some more. But we have to hear these things. We have to hear the positive side. Just the negative side, yeah, it's okay. It's important, but you have to hear the positive side. You know, and this whole Krishna book is all positive about Krishna. You know.